place, the subject of funding Ukraine, Israel, the border, Republican demands for changes in the president's policy when it comes to the border, all making for some tense final days before Congress takes its holiday break. Joining us to break it all down is the new House Speaker, Mike Johnson. Mr. Speaker, thanks for being here.
Brett, great to be with you.
First, let me get you to react to President Zelensky. I know you met with him behind closed doors and his concern about funding. Where does that stand, and what was your reaction to what he said?
Well, I didn't hear all of the interview, but I did spend some time with him today, and I told President Zelensky our very clear message. It's the same thing I've been telling to the White House since the day I got the gavel, and that is that we stand with the Ukrainian people, the beleaguered people of Ukraine, and against Vladimir Putin's brutal attack, his invasion of their country. But we have to get our own house in order first. And what I've told the White House, and I've reiterated to President Zelensky today, is that we have to have some clarity. We've been asking the White House for a clear strategy that will allow Ukraine to prevail in this conflict, and they've not provided satisfactory answers. We need clarity on the oversight over the precious treasury, the taxpayer dollars of the American citizens, and we need to know how that money is being spent and what the end game is. And the White House has been completely unclear about that.
Is it possible that a no Ukraine aid could happen in the Republican caucus?
Well, listen, I think that there is the majority of the Republicans and the Democrats in the House, by way of example, would vote for Ukraine aid if there is sufficient clarity on these questions, and also, of course, if we have really transformational change at the U.S. border.
Well, let's talk about that. Are there significant steps that are happening, negotiations still going on with Secretary Mayorkas and others in the administration about changes?
Well, I hope so. Look, I've been crystal clear about this. You know, if we're going to have a national security package of spending, national security begins at our own border. This is about our own sovereignty. These are policy changes that could be easily made, but the White House has been very reluctant. They really went silent on us all of this time. I've been the speaker for a little over 6 weeks, almost 7 weeks. And since the day I was handed the gavel, I've been saying that this was the condition, that we had to do this first. And we passed H.R. 2, the House passed our bill 6 months ago. It's been sitting on the desk of Chuck Schumer ever since. They've not taken us seriously, and here we are at the end of the year, and now they're saying we've run out of time. It's not the House's fault.
Yeah, here is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell on the timing of all of this. Take a listen.
They're leaving at the end of the week, so all I have said is practically impossible, even though we reach an agreement, to craft it, get it through the Senate, get it through the House before Christmas. That doesn't mean it's not important. And even though we've been emphasizing the border, I want to remind everybody of the importance of Ukraine.
So, just logistically, would you send the House home and then call them back if there's a deal, or just punt everything to January?
Look, the House will do its work if there was a deal, but it has not materialized. And as of tonight, they have given us the cold shoulder. So they're ignoring this, what I believe is the top priority of the American people. It doesn't matter where I've been in the country over the last few weeks, Brett, whether I'm in New York or the Southeast or out West, they all say the same thing. They're deeply concerned about what's happening. We had 12,000 people come over that border one day last week on Wednesday. If you look at the statistics from October, November, and so far in December, more people have crossed that border illegally since any entire year during the Obama administration. It is not a sustainable situation. It is harming our country in ways that are hard to describe, and we have to get on top.
So what's the red line when it comes to border policy to get the supplemental through?
Listen, the House's position is H.R. 2. It has very important provisions like asylum reform, parole reform, the end of the catch and release policies.
And if they don't go all the way to H.R. 2, could they get someplace that's satisfactory?
That's our position, but they have yet to come back and even volley anything over the net. So that's our position, and we've been very resolute about that.
There are a lot of other issues up on Capitol Hill, as I know you're figuring out as the new House Speaker. The Hill writes this: the GOP clash nixes Johnson plan for floor showdown on surveillance reforms. Representative Dan Bishop, Judiciary member, said he believes Johnson needs to back one of the two proposals, adding that the Queen of the Hill idea epitomizes Congress's stupidity. Mike Johnson is a great guy. He's under all the pressure that Washington brings to bear, and he'll figure out a path given sufficient time. This deals with Section 702 of the FISA Act, which lapses. You pulled two competing bills from the floor. Where is this? And do you think it's been mishandled?
Well, it has been mishandled. It's a very complicated issue. Section 702 of FISA is what protects us from attacks on the homeland. This is why we haven't had another 9/11, because of this very important surveillance provision of the law. But it was also abused by the FBI, by our own government, over almost 300,000 times between 2020 and 2021. And so the civil liberties of Americans have been jeopardized by that. It must be reformed. We have two committees with jurisdiction working on it simultaneously, House Judiciary, House Intel. They came up with two different bills that have some pretty clear distinctions between them. And I thought in the small d democratic fashion, we should sort that out because it's so important. This is not any regular area of policy. This deals with national security, and we got to get it right. So if it takes a little bit more time to do that, I think that's worth that.
So that gets you to April, and then you got to get something ironed out?
Yeah, well, but I hope and believe that we can get it done in early January. There is consensus on 38 of 45 reforms that were composed by a large group that worked on this, and we've got to figure out those final details and get it done.
You know, we talk a lot in the weeds here on the show. I think people know how Washington works when they're watching this. You all did not do a single spending bill after Thanksgiving. There's really not clarity what the top line is. So how do you avoid a government shutdown when it comes to January, considering where you are right now?
Yes, look, we did the continuing resolution into January and February, and what was really important about that, this innovation, is it broke the Christmas omnibus fever every year as long as I've been in Congress, and many years before that. The Senate would jam the House right before the Christmas holiday with a massive thousands of page long bill that no one had read or amended or debated, and it would spend, last year $1.7 trillion. That's not the way to run a railroad, and so we broke that fever, we got it into January, February, so now there's sufficient time to do the negotiations. We do need to agree upon the final top line so that our appropriators can get in the room and hash it out. But this is another situation where we're waiting on the Senate to act. We sent our proposal, which is the statutory FRA number, and they're just not responding, and so we're waiting on them to volley back.
What's the top priority? You're heading into an election year. You've got a very slim majority, and it's actually getting narrower as you lose a couple of members like George Santos and others. What's the top priority?
Well, the top priority is to keep and grow our majority. Why? So we can save the country from the policies that are destroying it. The Biden administration, in our view, has been an abject failure for the people. The Democrat majority in the Senate has been accomplices in that, and we've got to turn this thing around. I'm very bullish on the future, Brett. I think we're going to have a great election cycle for conservatives and Republicans because we're offering an alternative to all this. We have answers to all these great challenges, and our candidates and our incumbents are excited to get out there on the campaign trail and talk about that because I think it resonates with the people.
There's some concern in the caucus that the push for impeachment is losing some steam. Do you see that? And where do you see impeachment of President Biden, the inquiry that opens up the investigation?
Yes, look, my background is constitutional law. We follow the Constitution. I've said over and over, we're the rule of law team. So tomorrow we'll be voting on the inquiry. Why are we doing that? Because it's the next necessary step. The White House has stonewalled this investigation. It's gone methodically, carefully, as the Constitution requires of us. It's a very serious matter, but right now they're not turning over documents, they're not turning over key witnesses, and we'll have to defend our subpoenas in court. So to do that, you need an impeachment inquiry vote from the full House. We'll have that tomorrow. I believe it'll pass, and we'll be in the best position to continue to do our constitutional responsibility.
Exactly 4 years ago, this is Representative Mike Johnson.
The founders of this country warned against a single-party impeachment for good reason. They feared that it would bitterly and perhaps irreparably divide our nation. As the next election in 2020 is drawing so close now, and their candidates for president are so terribly weak, they obviously met somewhere at liberal high command about 75 days ago and convinced Nancy Pelosi they had to pull the trigger. I hope and pray that future Congresses can and will exercise greater restraint.
So the moderates in your caucus would say, why not exercise greater restraint now?
Well, we've shown great restraint. I mean, there are a lot of people who are frustrated that this hasn't moved faster, but there's a big distinction. I stand by every word I said in that video. There's a big distinction between what's happening now and what the Democrats do. Those are rushed sham impeachments. They did it quickly. They did not follow any of the procedures that I just described. We have 3 committees investigating this and following the truth where they lead and they have no option in doing anything else. It's Ways and Means, Judiciary, and Oversight, and they've uncovered some alarming facts about the Biden family and their dealings.
I mentioned the House balance of power. As you look at it, It's actually, with the vacancy, Santos is one vacancy, but it's very, very tight. You have a number of GOP-held districts where Joe Biden won in 2020, 17 without Santos. As you look ahead, are you concerned about this majority?
No, I think we're going to grow the majority. I really do, and I'm basing that on my experience out in the field. I've traveled in many of these districts over the last few weeks, doing events in our incumbents areas, and even in the deep blue states, Brett. We're running very well. Republican candidates are running well, and the reason is people there are frustrated. They have Democrat, leftist, progressive governors and mayors who are destroying their economies, and crime is rising, and all the other problems. And their outlet then is to vote for a Republican for the House, because that really is the only option they have to send a message that way. And so the polling is very good. You know, fundraising is going well. The grassroots is excited. We have to deliver on that. If we can demonstrate that we can govern well, and I think we can, I think we're going to grow this majority. I think we're going to win the Senate and the White House.
Anti-Semitism seems to be going into politics here. People are really upset what they're seeing at college campuses, what they're seeing in different parts of society. What's your take on that, number one? And number two, what possibly does the House do about it?
Well, it's shocking to see these college presidents, as we all have seen the video over 1 billion times. The video has been seen now of their alarming answers that they could not say unequivocally that the calling for the genocide of the Jewish people violates their values or their codes of conduct. It's outrageous. One of those presidents lost their position. I think the other two should as well. But Congress is looking at a number of measures. One of them is oversight over these institutions. They receive a lot of federal taxpayer dollars, and we want to know what they're doing with that. I think there needs to be accountability for this kind of thing. The rise in anti-Semitism is just alarming, and Jewish students at these institutions and people in cities around the country have great apprehension and great fear about their own safety right now. It's just, this is not who we are as Americans, and we've got to stand against it.
Finally, working with this administration, you know, we have this segment here on the show, Common Ground. I invite Democrats and Republicans, and a lot of your colleagues have come up, ranking members and chairmen, to talk about what they're doing as opposed to what they're arguing about. What do you think you can get done with this administration, considering your caucus, considering the narrow nature of how many votes you have?
If the White House would be reasonable, for example, on the border, Democrats across the country are crying out for relief from that open border because it affects every city, from New York City to places all around the country. They're not being reasonable. If they will come to the table and work with us, we want to get important things done. There are a lot of challenges facing the country. I'm a good faith negotiator. I come in the spirit of wanting to work together, but they have not shown us any indication that they're interested in doing that. And so the ball is quite literally in their court, Brett, and we're ready to work to solve problems for the American people. But it takes both parties to do that in a place where the margin is this small.
What keeps you up at night?
Well, the concern about the debt, which is our greatest national security threat, and the dangerous nature of the world right now, because we are projecting weakness on the world stage and it's inviting aggression. These are very serious times. But again, I'm very optimistic about the future. I think we can get through this, but we got a valley to walk through here.
You didn't know you were going to be in this spot. Is it everything you thought it was going to be?
Oh, and so much less, Greg, so much less. No, look, it's been a wild 6 weeks, but we're settling in, and we've got important work to do, and we take the responsibility seriously.
Mr. Speaker, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Nikki.